Someone that I feel is an appropriate thing to start with, because it sort of forms the, you could say, the basis for the inquiry tonight. And I know this person. I know this person has had real, genuine awakening experiences, and is very sincere about that direction in their life. And the question was about intention. You know, what role does intention play in all of this? And it comes from a deeper place than it may initially sound like. The deeper nature of the question was, if everything just is as it is, what is the role of intention, right? In the Buddhist tradition, one of the ways that's sometimes stated is, you know, if everything is already Buddha nature, where am I going to look for it? Right? Or what do I have to do to find it? Right? If it's already one, where do I even start looking? And so it's a similar question, you know, what if everything is all one already? If there's awakeness here already, where do I look for? Where's the intention? Where does that come into play? So it's actually a deep question, right? And we talked about a little bit about it last week. The original impulse may, you know, towards awakeness, towards enlightenment, may be from a personal desire, right? I want more peace in my life. I want to settle my busy mind down. I just want to be happy, right? You know, I have these patterns. I can't quite figure out how to get by it. And maybe if I were awake, I'd be able to just be past them somehow, right? So that might be the original impulse. It may be much more subtle than that too, where we don't actually know how we've gotten into this endeavor to seek this deeper nature of ourselves. And there's, I think it originates in Zen, but there's some advice about this spiritual journey at all. And the advice is, you know, better don't start. Right? But if you start, it's better to finish. There's actually some wisdom in that, because that that journey, that movement towards finding out what's actually true, isn't always easy, right? And so that that movement, you know, once we started, it doesn't really, it's not willing to sort of let us go, let us off the hook and say, oh, well, I guess you just didn't mean it. No, if you start down that road, there's a tendency to keep looking further. So even if we think, well, I'm just going to give this up and go out and, you know, live my life in the world, that's still the journey. It's still, you know, being explored, you know, using different material, but it's still the same journey for all of us. All of us are on that journey to discover joy and peace and happiness and a sense of at-homeness in the world and contentment. You know, we may do it in very, very different ways, but it's still the same motivation, right? So coming back to this question of, okay, so what role does intention play in that? One of, again, in Buddhism, one of the statements that one can make about one's intention on that journey is what's called bodhisattva vow, right? It comes from China, back probably 6th century China. And so in Chinese, there are a lot of characters that each one means like 5 different things. So there's lots of different translations of it, but the gist of it is a vow that a person can take where one dedicates oneself to enlightenment. But not only dedicates oneself to enlightenment, to finding it for oneself, but also dedicates oneself to the liberation of all beings. So some translations limit it to, well, sentient beings. Other translations, include animals and plants and all beings, right? So this vow, if one makes such a vow, this is has the feeling of immensity, almost like it's too much for a person to even commit to. I mean, it seems almost grandiose in a sense. What am I really saying that I'm dedicating this to liberate all beings? So it sounds like just committing oneself to an impossible journey. Right? The other aspect of it that puzzled me and I must say amused me for a while was the sense of, I will remain unawake until everyone else is awakened. So, which seemed to have set up a situation where everybody was at the gates of heaven saying, no, you first, no, please, sir, you first. And then nobody goes through. But the purpose is much more subtle and much deeper than this. And I would suggest that it is as the antidote to this feeling of I'm doing it just for me. Right? I'm doing it with a goal in mind, with an achievable goal, and I will get there, and this person will get there. So that's how it can easily be seen when we start out on this path. And so this vow of, I will seek awakening, but in a deeper sense, I will commit myself to the liberation of all beings, even at my own expense, even at the expense of my own awakening. So that shifts the table, right? It's no longer about me achieving what I want to achieve. It's suddenly becomes something much bigger than that, where we can't even imagine how that would work. We can't even imagine, a number of lifetimes where that could even be achieved, right? So it takes away all that sense of there is a specific goal out there and I am going there, right? It just takes away that whole sense of me, my attainment, my accomplishment, my awakening. And I see it as the real value of it is when awakening does happen, there is a sense of, oh, finally, there's, you know, what I've been seeking all this time, and here it's presenting itself, you know. And the risk there in that moment or days or weeks afterwards is that there can be this, the ego can come in as a sense of specialness, you know, something that I've achieved and those other people didn't. And, you know, so that's what is being guarded against, just that possible and even very likely misinterpretation and actually degradation of the whole thing, right? That illusion coming back in, you know, we see it in the front door and it comes, the illusion comes back in the back door. So that's what the statement is about. I dedicate myself not only to my own journey, but I dedicate it also to the journey of others. And I'm willing to sacrifice my own attainment if necessary for the purpose of others. You know, so it just takes away that whole sense of me as a separate person going on this journey. So again, what does this have to do with intention? Well, that intention is, it's pointing ourselves in a direction. It's making a statement about, you know, I intend to move in whatever way I can, to the best of my integrity, you could say. I want to move in this direction. In the Buddhist tradition, you know, I make a vow to do that in a way that leads to a place that's no longer personal. And I'm aware of that from the very beginning. Okay, in some ways, this is similar to my teacher Adyashanti once went to his teacher and said something about you know not being able to stop the mind, and you know, I'm just waiting for my mind to stop. And her response to him was, you know, if you wait for your mind to stop, you will wait for a very, 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 very long time. Okay, so you just take away that whole goal-oriented approach. I am going to get myself to an endpoint. So both of these, this bodhisattva vow and this idea that the mind can reach an endpoint where we can control it, right? That's just sort of taken off the table so that the mind no longer has an endpoint, a goal that it can hold on to, right? Because we don't know what that, well, there is no goal, right? So, but, you know, by admitting that up front, we take away the mind's tendency of thinking, well, I'll get somewhere someday and then I can relax. Then I can sit back and enjoy this awake state and everything will be fine. You know, so it's taking away that future goal. So again, what does intention have to do with that? Intention is pointing ourselves in the right direction to move. It's not I want to get to a specific point, largely because we don't have any idea what that point is. We don't have any idea what this awakeness is until it's experienced ourselves. You know, we can hear other people talk about it, hear their stories, but until it's experienced ourselves, we don't know what it is. We don't know what it is that we're intending to go towards. We literally can't know that. Not because it's a secret, it's because it is itself what's looking for that. So until we recognize that, there's no way to explain it to somebody. So it's a little bit like back in the early 19th century, before the European settlers had made it much further west than the Mississippi River. There was still the whole unknown western lands beyond that. Native Americans were certainly there, but the white settlers hadn't made it across that 2/3 of the country yet. And then Lewis and Clark came, and it wasn't like there was a map, right, where they could go from, St. Louis to Portland, Oregon. I mean, there was no Portland, Oregon, and there was no map. So there was no apparent, they didn't know what the endpoint was, and they didn't know how to get there. But what they did have is this desire to move in that direction. You could say that's intention, right? The intention to find out for themselves in their own direct experience what lay in that direction, right? So they head out, and along the way they might, meet, the local tribe who may have some experience for, maybe 10 or 20 miles around where they live, and they can give them some indication of, that's possible, that's more like danger over that way. And, Lewis and Clark can decide whether, they're giving trustworthy advice or not, and move in that direction based on their best intention, right? So it's at every moment along the way, there is intention, there is, and what holds us in, you could say, the direction of learning, direction of understanding. The only thing that we have is our own integrity, our own honesty, our own ability to be honest with ourselves about what we really want. And one of the things that can pull us off that direction is opting for comfort over truth, right? I just want things to be easy. I just want to relax. I don't want to have to really look deeply. I don't want to have to, really, see all those shadowy things that I've never been willing to look at in myself. I just want to feel good, right? So that's one of the detours. It can be a detour for the whole rest of our life. Or we might say, what's really enjoyable, interesting, fascinating are spiritual experiences. I just want more of those. I'm fascinated by that. And so that's another detour. So there's all possibilities to, go astray, you could say, on this path. There's not really astray. I mean, there's always something to be learned, whatever choice that we happen to make, because we make the choice in our best interest, in our interest of our own happiness. We decide to do this. We might find out later that that's didn't have quite the payoff that it looked like it was going to have. And then we come back and try a different route. So it's all ways that we learn. So that's the purpose of intention, is to really set the direction. It's not to pinpoint a goal, believing that there's 10 steps to get there, and I'll just go step by step and step, and then I get there. We don't know that. People may try to tell us that. We may have the chance to learn whether that's true or not. But what's really much more valuable is to set the direction. One way to do that is just making a vow, you could say, to ourselves. You could say to ourselves, or you could say to the universe or God, or all the same thing, but however you think of it, you can make that commitment, make that statement. I will dedicate myself to a journey to find out what is true, even at my own expense, right? Even at my own discomfort. And I will follow that thread wherever it leads as best that I can see it. And I will commit myself to that journey. And if I happen along the way to find something that seems like it might be of value to others, I also commit myself to helping others find what may be true in their lives to their own experience. Right. So if you ever choose to make a vow like that, it's helpful not to just do it in your own head. There's too many other things going on in there. What's really has power is to do it outside, out loud, pick a inspirational place, top of a hill, Grand Canyon, sunset overlooking the ocean, or even in your backyard, someplace that has meaning for you, and say it out loud. And that points us in a direction. It gives us courage to move down that direction.